Hello and welcome to the second of our 6 live events this week. Tonight we present 3 interviews from our Unsung Heroes Series, celebrating stunt coordinators and performers involved throughout Doctor Who's 57-year history. First off, Alex talks to Jim Dowdall, whose credits include Day and Genesis of the Daleks. Then at 8:25 we talk to new series stunt performer Marcus Shakesheff. Then at 8:50 we round the evening off with Rocky Taylor. You can tweet along and join in the conversation using our hashtag Who's Unsung Heroes. Don't forget to click like and subscribe so you can receive notification of future episodes.
So my guest today, you will be very familiar with his work, even if you might not necessarily know his name, as he's worked on Bond, Flash Gordon, Colditz. I mean, you name it, he's done it. And it's a delight to welcome the stuntman, Jim Dowdall.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very well, thank you very much. Yeah, no, I'm good.
Are you managing to keep yourself busy during these times?
Well, I live on a farm, so I'm a bit like a one-armed paper hanger, really, with all the things that need to be done here with animals. And my wife's not too well at the moment. My daughter broke her leg in January, and she is just come out of her plaster cast. So I am full-time carer, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, busy boy. There's no question of sitting around scratching my nose and wondering what to do with the day.
Well, I suppose at least the days fly by, but I imagine they always do. But I wanted to talk about Doctor Who before we move on to some of your other work. And amongst your Doctor Who work, you worked with both Tom Baker and the Daleks. Does that ring any bells?
Yes, I mean, you know, you have to remember at that time, okay, the Daleks had a certain, everybody knew about the Daleks and this, that, and the other. But for us going onto a film set, a Dalek was a thing made out of plywood that skated about on the studio floor, and people put soundtrack and told it to, exterminate afterwards. And they were not frightening. They were, if anything, slightly ridiculous. And rather like the sets on Doctor Who, everything wobbled. If you leant against the set, people would say, "Don't do that; it'll fall down." Okay. So not thrilling memories of the Daleks, I'm afraid. I wish I could tell you a really exciting story about Daleks blowing up and us doing daring things and leaping over them. Didn't happen.
But I wanted to ask about the people that you worked with, people like Max Faulkner, Steve Ismay, Stuart Fell. Had you known them through a lot of other jobs, or would Doctor Who have been one of the sort of first times you'd encountered them?
Okay, yeah, so no, Max Faulkner was the man who really got me into stunt work, and I met him on Where Eagles Dare in 1968, I think it was, when I was a young armourer in those days. I wasn't a stuntman then, I was an armourer looking after the guns. And Max was a stuntman, and he actually gets shot by Clint Eastwood in the sequence in the dining hall when Richard Burton is giving the whole plot away. And Max and I got talking, and he was quite a gun nut as well, and we became mates, although he was probably 15, maybe 20 years older than me then. And I used to go around to his place, and we used to fly birds of prey together. He had a bird of prey, and he taught me about archery. He was really, my father died when I was 8, so he was kind of a mentor and a father to me, Max. Stuart Fell? Stuart was, I knew from all sorts of things. He's another ex-para. Great act. He was a great acrobat, stilt walker, fire eater, all that kind of stuff. And him and I actually we were jousting in America together, and with a whole load of other people, Nosha Powell and Greg Powell and Denny Powell and Jack Cooper and lots of names that you won't know about now. But yeah, we jousted live in a place called the Cow Palace in San Francisco. And Stuart was our sort of jester and stilt walker and doing a bit of sword fighting whilst we were busy falling off horses for an extra £10 every time you fell off the horse. black and blue, but you could always rub the embrocation on with the £10 note afterwards.
And I also wanted to ask about Rick Lester, who was the fight arranger on your first Doctor Who.
Yeah, Rick. I haven't seen Rick. The last time I saw him, possibly, he came out to actually on the jousting tour with us in 1973 out in America, and I believe he married the divorcee wife of a sheriff in California somewhere, if I've got my facts right, with Rick Lester. But yeah, I remember Rick, very tall guy, nice man. In those days, I was in awe of people who were the coordinator, and so one would go along with whatever they said. And Rick was helpful, nice man. Can't say any more than that about him, really. Don't even know if he's still alive.
I think he's something of a mystery. Seems to have disappeared. So I don't know, to be honest.
Well, it's probably because he married the sheriff's wife, and maybe the sheriff came after him. Who knows?
Dramatic end. But in comparison to everything else you've done, Doctor Who, a couple of days here and there, probably wasn't any grand setups or anything. It probably it's a footnote really in your work.
Yes, it is, because at that time there were a lot of shows that we were very busy with all the time. There was Doctor Who, there was The Avengers, there was The Prisoner. All these sort of things were being filmed. I can't say exactly at the same time, but there were all these TV shows, even Dixon of Dock Green and not Zcast, Softly, and all those shows that I used to work on. So Doctor Who was just another show. It was nothing. It's outstanding. Rather like working on the original Star Wars. We just thought, here we go. We're running around in these stupid, stormtrooper outfits, which are incredibly uncomfortable. Because every time you sat down, a piece of plastic went up your butt, and you sweated like hell. And the helmet, every time you nodded, the helmet would either go down, you'd be looking at the floor, or you did that and you'd be looking at the ceiling. So you had to back it out with foam rubber. And when you packed it out with foam rubber, it got even hotter and even. I mean, it was just dreadful. And we thought, this is rubbish, just running around firing these guns all over the place and tripping over and falling down steps and things. And then, of course, you went go and see the film, which we did. We went to the crew showing, and we'd never seen anything like that, post-production like that, with all these things going on. I mean, I remember standing up at the after the very first part, when that thing comes over the top of you, and the spaceship comes over there, and we were in the Odeon Tottenham Court Road, which was the first cinema to have Dolby sound. And it was incredible. It was incredible. The whole audience, which is all film crew, all stood up and clapped. And I went home after that, because we had no mobiles in those days. And I just spent the afternoon ringing people up, saying, you've got to go and see this film. Absolutely fantastic. But I never did that with Doctor Who.
Well, fair enough. But from the moment that Star Wars film was shown, did you find that the level of the sequences and the stunts you were asked for were up the game, or how did that change the stunt side of things?
Not that much, no, because the original Star Wars, there wasn't that much. Actually, a lot of running around, but there was not a lot of what you call really high-class, heavy-duty stunt work in it. It was mostly falling over and maybe falling down some steps and taking a couple of bullet hits on your thing and all that. No, it was another job.
And if anyone looks at your website, it's obvious that you have a love and fascination for heavy artillery, for tanks, all sorts of things. And you said to me before we started about Colditz, that you did a lot of motorbike chases through the woods and things. Was that quite exciting, just to almost be playing with these toys?
Yes, it was. And the episode 1 of Colditz, which I never saw it, and I found it on YouTube the other night, and there's a very, very, very young yours truly riding a BMW sidecar combination, which was, at that time I could have never afforded something like that, but because I loved World War II military vehicles, was always been my thing, and riding that around in the woods and thinking, God, I'm going to have one of these one day. I'm going to get one of these one day. I was much more interested in riding the bike than I was with, worrying about the fact that it was Bob Wagner that we were supposed to be chasing through the woods. I couldn't really give no monkeys. It was just another actor as far as I'm concerned. I was having fun though, spinning the bike round and doing all that kind of stuff. But in that episode, I did actually watch episode 1. I see myself in 3 different parts of it in different uniforms. But nobody, in those days, they just used to say, right, okay, do you do this bit? And then you be the body in the sack that gets thrown out of the back of the truck. And then you drive the truck in. And then you're the guard who arrests somebody and pulls them in and all that. You were all sort of just put a different hat on a slightly different angle and maybe give you a moustache and off you went again. Nobody noticed.
And so, as a stuntman, your speciality is primarily what, tanks or military hardware, or you took across everything?
No, not at all. No, I've done done a lot of fire jobs, lots and lots of fights, which is our bread and butter, I suppose. Cars has been a big part, and I've done literally hundreds of car commercials, precision driving cars. But in the old days before CGI, we would do things with cars properly. We would drive them along the roofs of buses, or I drove one up the inside of a lighthouse once, the inside steps of a lighthouse, which was a Austin Metro commercial. But it wouldn't climb up the stairs because it was only 2-wheel drive, so we had to make it 4-wheel drive. Put a second engine in the back with a driven axle, and then I had to control that with a twist grip at the same time as driving up these steps. It was in the studio, but by the time I got to it, if I got it wrong, there was an 18 or 21 foot drop onto the studio floor in the car, which would have definitely made my eyes water. So it was quite hairy. And then, I did a job for Mazda, driving the Mazda over the top of a Porsche and a Mercedes. So we had the Porsche and the Mercedes linked together, and then we put 2 tiny little ramps behind them, and I drove up the ramps and over the rooftop, down over the bonnet and all that, trying to prove that the Mazda, which was a third of the cost of either of those 2 cars, but actually had the same performance figures. But that's how we advertised cars in those days. But it was great fun, fantastic fun. Really did some silly stuff with cars.
But how do you train for something like that? When you started out, how do you first learn how to properly drive these vehicles?
If I told you that, you want my job, wouldn't you? No, I used to race cars in the 70s. I used to race Clubman's Formula cars, and I've had a motorcycle license since I was 16 and did a bit of scrambling and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important in my mind, not so much now, but when I was younger, was having the option of a front-wheel drive car or a rear-wheel drive car, and you can make a rear-wheel drive car a great deal more interesting stunt-wise than you can a front-wheel drive car. Or if you've got 4-wheel drive, or you only got 2-wheel drive, or you've got various aspects of knowing the mechanics of cars in order to make them do what you want. And I've always loved spannering, so I know the inside of a car and I know what I can do to tweak it. And then occasionally, we have to really do some adaptation, and we'd sit there and think about, like I had to have a milk float that was a drag racer once for a commercial. Yeah, so we put a V8 Ford normally aspirated engine in a milk float, and I had a lot to do with actually getting that right, so that the balance of the milk float was right, and then it didn't do an immediate wheelie and just stay on its back, for the whole thing. But we get lots of wheel spin, and I could slide it and all that kind of stuff. That was great. We got paid for that shit.
Because now you're at a point that you're more of a coordinator rather than the one that will jump through the windows. How is that being sort of almost the other side of it in some ways? Obviously, you're still doing the stunts, but doing more of the sort of theoretical and planning side.
That's always fun. And I coordinated my first film in 1978, when I'd only been a sort of stunt performer for about 5 or 6 years, because who knows why? I remember my face fitted, but I did a film for some Indians, a guy called Feroz Khan, and I did a film called Qurbani, which means the sacrifice. And it was the most extraordinary experience, probably, of my life. And then that's a whole other story about working for Feroz Khan, because we were being paid cash and all sorts of strange things happened. And he was like, okay, well, no, we won't do that. Can we have a guy falling off the roof in this one? And how about we blow the car up there and then we get some guys and they'll say, I mean, he would almost make it up as he went along. Now, that's fantastic. But by goodness, you've got to think on your feet. And that taught me a huge amount. And but prior to that, the first coordinating job I ever did was on a film called Holocaust 2000 with Kirk Douglas. Does the name Kirk Douglas mean anything to you?
Yeah.
You've heard of him? Okay. So at that time, he was still a big cheese, big noise. You know, Kirk Douglas, international Hollywood star, blah, 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 blah. And this was my first, a mate of mine was the production manager on it, and he put me in to be the stunt coordinator. It was only a little fight sequence in a house down near Guildford somewhere. So I went down, looked at the house and the room that we were going to do it in, moved some furniture around to make it compatible with what it said in the script about how he has a fight with this guy and he knocks him over and blah, 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 blah. I had a special breakaway table built, everything else. And the night before, I'd got the whole fight worked out in my head. The night before, I never slept. I never slept a wink. I kept on going through the whole fight. This is Kirk Douglas, you know. So we get there and meet Kirk Douglas, and I've got a stunt double for him, who is so extraordinary as a double, a bloke called Dave Brandon. He even had the dimple in his chin like Kirk Douglas had. You know, I mean, this guy looked more like Kirk Douglas than Kirk Douglas did. And Kirk Douglas was seeing this double all dressed up, and he said, "Get that guy out of here. I don't use stuntmen." I went, "Okay, all right, here we go." And then he said, "Okay, show me what you got." So I go through the whole fight, and he went, "I don't see it like that." So now my night of no sleep, my days of thinking about every move has just gone down the toilet. And we have to start again from scratch and have to work off the cuff as Mr. Douglas wants to do it. And it was a salient lesson in our business that nothing is in tablets of stone. You've got to be flexible, and you've got to be able to come up with it at very short notice, something that's going to do the job. Because it's no good saying, "Hang on, that's not it. Look, I've got it written all down here." It doesn't work like that. So that was again another great lesson.
And because as well as coordinating and doing your sort of own stunts, you doubled for a lot of people as well. You know, Bonds and Timothy Dalton and Flash Gordon. So when you come to double someone, what's the sort of approach for that? Because of course you've got to get their mannerisms as well.
Yes, and it was always interesting doubling. I mean, doubling for Tim on Flash Gordon was very interesting, because I would follow him around the studio and look at the way he walked, just slightly, his gait, his mannerisms, and all that. I mean, you know, we're doing a fight out on a disc in space with knives and whips, and I mean, theoretically, it's a monkey in a wetsuit smoking a pipe, but I wanted to be like Tim, so I got, you know, the costume people to make my doubles costume exactly the same length, just where it came down over the bum, and exactly the same hairstyle, and it was interesting, and I got on very well with Tim, very, very well with him. We had it was a lovely show to work on, actually, if a little strange, because we filmed a great deal of it in a hangar in Weybridge, and it was in the winter. And not only was prior to the fight on the disc where I was doubling Tim, I was also a Hawkman for a while. So we were flying around on wires in this enormous great hangar in Weybridge in the winter, which you couldn't heat it. I mean, it was like an ice box in there, and we're just wearing a silly little pair of trunks and a pair of wings and a ray gun and hanging around on these wires. And in those days, we flew on wires which were single piano wires. They weren't multi-strand shark wire, which is what we use now. And occasionally they would break. And if one broke, inevitably the double strain on the other one would mean it would just be a matter of time before the other one broke. So you had to get people down instantly. The moment that ping went, you could be on the way down if there was a ping ping, and you would be on the deck. And we had it happen a couple of times, and eventually we said, you know what, we're going to have to put a stunt rig, a box rig, right the way across. So it was like 2,500 boxes we put across the floor there to save us if the wires broke. And sure enough, the wires did actually break one time, and it saved. I think it was Andy Bradford who went into it. But you know, different time.
Well, I think we very much, not even scratched the surface of some of your work, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's worth saying to viewers that you have a book, Man on Fire, talking about some of your work.
Yeah.
So how was it putting that together, reliving some of those moments and looking back?
Well, it wasn't my idea. It was a pal of mine who he writes biography. He rang me up and said, "You've got to put all this nonsense down on paper." And I went, "I haven't got time. I'm too busy." And he said, "Oh, I will come sit with you with a tape recorder, or thing, and we'll do it." So I sat down with him, and then of course, when you start to jog the memory bank and you start to pull things out from 40 years ago and some of the stories, and now occasionally if I flip through something, I think, oh God, I wish I'd remembered about that one. I wish I'd remembered, because we're very lucky in our business. There's huge diversity. You can sustain quite a lot of pain, but there's huge diversity, and we travel. I've been lucky. I've been twice around the world in our business. Got paid very well for it, and been to some extraordinary places and seen, sunsets and sunrises in deserts and jungles and ice caps and all those things that you're getting paid for, and traveling, first ticket, most of them, although occasionally you have to stay in some pretty horrendous places, which is another story I could tell you about. But it's been a great privilege, but you've got to come up with the goods. When somebody takes you 5,000 miles somewhere to perform something, you better make sure that when you get on that airplane, you know what you're doing. Because if you get there and you don't come up with the goods, then your career the word gets around very quickly. But I've been very lucky, and I've had fantastic fun. So yeah, read the book, Man on Fire, if you're interested. It's got all sorts of silly stories. I tried not to make it too serious, and there I was, 40,000 feet, 3 engines on fire, and fuel gauge meaning E, which doesn't mean enough, and all that sort of stuff. It's very easy to do all that. Oh my goodness me, there I was, and it was. But in the end, what we do is madness. It's playing cowboys and Indians, and it's great fun. It's great fun. But I wouldn't recommend it to my offspring. Thank goodness our daughter is not interested in that. She likes mixing with stunt people, but she doesn't want to be a stunt girl, and I'm delighted for that. But Max Faulkner was the man that kicked it all off for me, and I spoke at his funeral probably 10, 15 years ago, and I remember him with great affection. He taught me a huge amount about this business, and he was there. I took him on my very first stunt job for his advice, and I was doubling for somebody called Kenneth Moore, who I think most of the people who were watching this wouldn't have a clue who Kenneth Moore was. But he was a big shot actor in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and the stunt was he was supposed to be playing King George or something or other, and he was in a wheelchair, an old-fashioned sort of like Victorian wheelchair, and there was a curved staircase going down onto a ballroom, and there's all these people all dancing there, and the king is supposed to come down the stairs in this wheelchair, but it's one of the old-fashioned wicker ones with a tiny little wheel at the front, and a single steering like this, and these wheels at the back, and the staircase is curved. And as soon as I got there, I said, this isn't going to work, because the moment I go down the first step, that the little steering wheel at the front is going to come off the ground, and I'm just going to go in a straight line straight into the banisters. I won't be able to get round the corner, because it hasn't got like a modern wheelchair where you can grip the wheel and brake slightly. There was, and I was wearing I had a beard and a moustache and a blanket up to here. It's supposed to be an old man, and it was like, what are we going to do? And Max said, you need to think. Well, okay. So eventually I ran some rope around the inside part of the curve of the thing, and I made a loop that I could hang on to there with a little strop, which would keep the chair in line. And then just as it straightened out, I let go of the strop and I went sailing across the floor. But otherwise, they couldn't see it. The director said, "Why? You can go." I said, "No, without that, I'm just going to go straight into that banister rail and I'm going to get tipped out and it'll all be, complete clusterfuck." Anyway, but that was again a salient lesson about you've got to be prepared to adapt and think on your feet. If you rehearsed it and it was raining and you get there and it's dry, or vice versa, or it's snowing, or that's what I love about it. You never know. The phone goes and you don't know whether they want you to ride a bicycle off Beachy Head or have a fight with a bloke in a chimpanzee costume or whatever it is. And all those things have been such fun. I hurt when I get up in the morning. I hurt because of all the bangs and things, and jumping out of airplanes when I was in Paris and things. But I wouldn't have had it any other way. I really wouldn't. Great fun.
Well, on that note, I think all left to say is thank you very much for your time, Jim. It's been absolutely fascinating. And I do urge any viewers to read your book, because hearing you talk about your work is absolutely fantastic. Well, hello and welcome to Who's Unsung Heroes. Today, I've got the great pleasure of talking to a stuntman who has worked with two doctors, David Tennant and Matt Smith, but he's not the only generation of his family to have been involved in the show. I'm delighted to introduce stuntman Marcus Shakesheff. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad, thanks. And how are you coping in these strange times?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not too bad. I'm all right. I got lots to keep me busy at home. Obviously, all the films and everything is shut down. I was doing Pennyworth, the Batman's Butler show, before everything went into lockdown. But obviously, what's going on is horrific. But I got a lot to keep me occupied, so it's not too bad.
Oh, good. No, it's unlike some people, a stuntman can't really rehearse or work from home. It's not...
No. Obviously, as discussed, I've got a separated shoulder from messing around, training at home and stuff. But no, there's not a lot anyone can do really.
Well, we said I want to talk about Doctor Who, and you're having such an incredible career. Feature films, Marvel, all sorts of productions. So how does Doctor Who sort of stand out from these other shows? Does it?
Well, for me, yeah, it does. I'm a Doctor Who fan. I've actually watched every episode of The Doctor since the first up until Peter Capaldi. I stopped at, I forgot the lady's, Whittaker, Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. Nothing to do with her. I think she's a great Doctor, but I couldn't get past the third act. I was struggling a little bit. So for me, I signed off after that. I'm sad to say, but I've always been a big fan of Doctor Who. I've always enjoyed the concept more than probably the actual show, because the concept is, the concept of the Doctor and the way it's evolved. I love that whole process, and I was fascinated with the Doctor. So my Doctor was, if I'm correct, the sixth Doctor, Sylvester McCoy, or was he the seventh?
Then Colin was number 6.
So he was the seventh, Sylvester McCoy. So he was my Doctor growing up. And I always remember as a kid watching it and my dad going, I remember Dalek was about to kill him. And I'm like, I would have been 5 or 6. I'm like cacking myself, like, oh my God, he's going to die. And my dad's going, nah, don't worry, you just regenerate. And that's when I was like, what? What's this regeneration? And my dad explained, once he dies, and that's where I was hooked from, that whole thing, that you could regenerate. So for me, I've always been a fan of Doctor Who, big fan. So as a stunt guy, I've always, as you said, I'm always normally on the big features. I've been very lucky to work on the big features. and when Tennant was the Doctor and it was coming to the end, I was like, oh no, I didn't get to do whatever with Tennant at all, and I was gutted. But then out of the blue, literally, I had a day off. I had a call. Basically, Paul Herbert, another stunt coordinator, doubled the master, that actor. I forget his name now.
John Sims.
John Sims. So Paul Herbert used to double him for everything. Paul Herbert was busy. I had the day off. I was the same build as Paul Herbert and John Sims. They're like, oh, do you want to come and double the master? And I'm like, yeah. So, and that was obviously his last episode as well. So I literally just got in there, and I was like, I mean, I didn't do much. He fired a gun at me, and I dived out of the way, and there was an explosion. I mean, you watch it on the show, it looks nothing, you know, how they shot it, but it was diving out of the way of an explosion. So to do his last step was good. The only thing is, there was definitely, when I was on set, there was definitely a sadness in the air, especially from Tennant, because it was his last step. You could tell that it was a little uncomfortable, but I was just glad to get in there and going, yes, I got that one. And then when I did Matt Smith's episode, what was funny is because of the way I work, like I showed you my collection of DVDs I have to catch up on. Because of the way it works, so I don't get to watch. I know Doctor Who's on a Saturday. I don't get to watch it. I always have to watch catch up. And sometimes, like, I can be in the studio from Monday to Friday, come on the weekend, and you just might not be in that place to watch it. So I tend to wait till the box sets come out and binge watch them. So when I worked on Matt Smith's episode, I hadn't actually watched any of Matt Smith's stuff. So I was excited going in, but I hadn't actually watched him. And at the time, I was like, I thought Tennant was such a good Doctor, I thought no one could beat him. And so I did Matt Smith's episode, and then afterwards watched all of Matt Smith's. I was like, oh my God, he's such an amazing Doctor. But I still got in there, got the chat and everything, and he was cool. But I didn't realize how good he was. I mean, I remember thinking, bloody hell, he's young. But no, he was good. He's really good. Those two, for me, were the best.
And that Matt Smith episode was Cold War, which brought the Ice Warriors back.
Yes. Which I was excited about, because obviously they're in with the first Doctor when they were introduced. So yeah, I knew the guy.
Spencer Wilding.
Yeah, Spencer Wilding, who I know him quite well from working in the film industry. So he was playing him, and then because he bashes me down by the Ice Warrior, I was like, yeah, this is so cool. No, it was good. It was good. What was funny though, at first, before I met Matt Smith, they had a stand-in who was standing in for Matt Smith, so he was in the costume and stuff. I thought he was the Doctor. So I was chatting to him for ages. We had such a bizarre conversation, because he must have felt like, I don't think he snagged that I thought he was the actor playing the Doctor. It was only later on I went into the makeup chair and I could hear there was Matt Smith and Amy Pond, the actress's name now.
Karen Gillan.
Yeah. So, but this is what's funny. Those two were in the chair, but I didn't realize till later she wasn't in that episode. So what they were doing was they were doing crossover episodes or pickups of something else, but her and him were basically in the chair and they were bantering along. It was only when I saw him in the costume and I was like, right, I connected. I realized the guy I've been talking to half the day was standing.
As a stuntman, you're brought in for a particular sequence. Something like Doctor Who, is that quite literally just 2 days worth of work?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot what I do. So I'm normally on for the bulk of the show, and I'm with a team. Doctor Who, they because of the nature what it is, they haven't got the budget for big stunts. They don't have a budget for a big team. You've seen it. The action isn't, it's not action packed. So generally, Doctor Who is you're just in for a day or two, and then you go back. Nothing's really prepped as such. It's just on the day stuff, which for me is like as a fan, because I'm a fan of the show. I mean, I get it's aimed at kids. It's always been aimed at kids, so I get that. But for me as a fan, I've always been like, I feel like they're missing a trick when it comes to the action. Like especially when you have the whole Time War thing. I thought they missed a massive trick on that. I mean, they could have made a Hollywood movie with Time War and all of. I mean, such a great concept and story. They could have had like massive space battles and all sorts, but yeah. So generally, just in for a couple of days and then you're in.
So when you came in for that first day, doubling for John Sim, did you meet him? Because of course you've got to capture his mannerisms to an extent.
Yeah. I mean, generally as a double, you tend to watch set, the way they move, and you do try mimic, and it is hard. I wouldn't say I'm good at it. I mean, there's other stunt people. I don't know if you ever heard of Buster Reeves. He doubled Batman for all the Nolan films. He got the ability to watch someone and just mimic them, mimic everything, which is that's a skill in itself. But for John Sim, there wasn't a lot. I was just diving out of the way, so it wasn't like I had to mimic him or walk from A to B or do any running. It was literally just diving out of the way of a gunshot and explosion. But I was more excited on that than Matt Smith, because obviously Matt Smith I haven't watched any. Tenants I've been following up to that point. So the only thing was, obviously, you don't know anything, don't know any endings. I go in, I've got given sides, and I'm like, I shouldn't be reading this. I shouldn't be reading this. It's quite funny because I did a show called Krypton, which is based on Superman's planet, Homeworld. And when I did the first season, and I knew I was going to be a fan of this because I'm a sci-fi fan. So the first season, I got told off. I wouldn't read the scripts. So what I do was, I'd get other stunt guys to break down the scripts and just tell me the bones of what the action stunts were, and then I design the action. But then the producers found out. So for season 2, they were like, you have to read the scripts. I'm like, I don't want to know what's happening, because I've already done it on Doctor Who where I've spoiled endings and stuff. I don't want to read it. And same with Pennyworth. I'm doing Pennyworth season 2. First season I loved. And second season I'm like, I really don't want to read this script. I just want them to say, this is the action, and do it so I can enjoy it afterwards. But it is what it is.
So, you're being a fan of science fiction, this fantasy series that are full of action and stunt setups. Does that sort of influence how you look at a sequence, knowing the sort of thinkings of those characters?
I mean, Doctor Who, I've never been a coordinator or fight coordinator on it. I've only gone in as a performer. And the information I've got, because I've only done a day or two, is very limited. When I did a show like Krypton, because I know I'm a big fan of it, I'm a part of it, and like they introduced Doomsday, Lobo, they introduced all these big characters, Brainiac. I already know the characters. So when it comes to the action, I mean, I did Wonder Woman as well. My son coordinated the movie Wonder Woman. I know these characters. So when it comes to design action, I am like absolutely, what's the word? Buzzing off my tits, because I'm like, oh yeah, we're doing this great sequence. And I'll go into meetings, and sometimes you especially when it comes to like stuff I know like that, I know the literature. When we're doing concepts, I'm suggesting these things. My knowledge base sometimes shock people. I mean, there's something I can't say, unfortunately. There's something that happened on Pennyworth season 2, and we'd set it up, we designed it. I can't say what it is, unfortunately, but on the day when we come filming it, there was that moment. I went from my professional job to, oh my God, I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, I just did this. This is so iconic. So I do have those moments to myself where sometimes I'm reflecting what I'm doing. Wonder Woman, I didn't. Wonder Woman, it was only after it finished, I realized what I'd done, because that was too busy. It was too immense and crazy. But on Krypton, there were times where, like, we're doing stuff with Doomsday, and I'm having a fan nerd attack. Doctor Who, when the Ice Warrior, obviously at the time I was more excited about the Ice Warrior than Matt Smith, because I hadn't seen any of Matt Smith's stuff. End of Time, doing the last Tenant. I mean, out of all the episodes to do, that was probably the one for me to do. So there are moments where I step back, but a lot of the time I'm so focused on the job, I do have to go in the corner and have my geek nerd out attack.
But so what was it that first got you interested in being a stuntman? Was it the love of the material?
No, basically, I mean, I was a competitive martial artist, so I used to compete, and I was also an actor. I used to do a lot of Welsh television, only like small little jobs. And even though I enjoyed the acting, I was always more towards the action. And then I got cast to play Batman in the Arkham Asylum games. So I did all the motion capture as Batman for the Arkham Asylum games. And it's from there, really, I was like, basically, if someone came to me and said, oh, we'll give you a role in EastEnders, I would have gone, I'm not interested. I'm not that type of actor. But if someone said, oh, we'll give you a role in something action, then I'm all over it. So I realized then probably stunts was probably a better path for me than necessarily acting. And along the way, I've done a lot of like featured acting roles, action roles, action actor roles. I've been in films like Scott Adkins. I don't know if you know who he is. He's like a B-list martial arts action actor. I played a villain in Sherlock Holmes 2 where I'm fighting Robert Downey Jr. So those parts do interest me. But yeah, I just realised stunts was more for me than the acting side.
And I mean, looking at your work, there's things like Thor, Star Wars, a solo story. There's some fantastic big productions. But then it made me smile to read Hold the Sunset and Death in Paradise, which are shows that I don't think, they're going to be stunt heavy, but obviously.
Hold the Sunset. That right, you say that. Hold the Sunset was probably the best one for me in my career, and I'll tell you why. It's because John Cleese was there, right? And I don't get starstruck, right? The only time I got starstruck in the early days, I did Sherlock Holmes, Robert Downey Jr. And I got a little starstruck with Robert Downey Jr. on the first one because I was like, wow, it's Robert Downey Jr. But that's probably the only time I ever got starstruck in my career. Other than that, I never got starstruck. But when I met John Cleese, I got starstruck. And I should admit this, they basically said that he doesn't want photos or anything like that taken with him, because he gets asked all the time. I was so unprofessional. I was like, do you know what? This guy's a hero. I'm not going to meet him again. Do you know what? I work on the big films anyway. I don't care if this small TV production don't call me back. So I was just like, sir, Mr. John Cleese, I know I'm not meant to ask you, but honestly, I need a photo. And what was brilliant about it, I was expecting him to tell me to do one. He went, hey, no problem. And literally, as I held my camera to a selfie, he went, don't you dare do that. And literally, some guy was walking, he went, oh, you, hold this camera. We're not doing no selfie. I was like, legends. And I'm like, yes, got my photo. He was such a lovely man. And like I said, the briefing to the crew was don't ask for photos, but I could not. Like I said, any other time, not a problem. Any other actor, yeah, whatever, I don't care, whatever. But John Cleese, how can you not? How can you not with a man such a legend? So I know you say about these big productions, but when you do small productions like that, and you're with someone like that, or even Doctor Who, or you're an iconic Doctor, definitely worthwhile. 100% worthwhile. Just those moments, I think you remember.
And who would have been your sort of inspirations within the stunt world? Who were the stuntmen that you looked up to or learnt from?
Well, I had an epiphany one day. So I was doing acting, I wasn't enjoying it. I love my martial arts, and I didn't want to be a teacher, because to be a teacher, unfortunately, you have to water down and have to sell your soul a little bit to have a big school. That is the reality. And I'm not disrespecting any school, but that is the reality. To keep it hardcore, unless you're doing like MMA, if you're doing some style, you have to water it down for the masses to make any type of money. And that just wasn't interesting me. And I was watching a Jackie Chan film, Project A, and I saw there's a big bar restroom fight in it with it's all kicking off, and I'm just watching it. I'm watching Jackie Chan hit these guys, and I'm like, man, I could do that. And that was the moment when I realized, yeah, do you know what? I need to do stunts. And then, I was always into the big films like the 80s, 90s action films, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Jackie Chan, Jet Li. I was heavily influenced by Hong Kong cinema. So I started studying all the stunt people in Hong Kong cinema. Then I started studying all the people in Western cinema. So you got Vic Armstrong. He's a really, really good stunt coordinator. He did all the original Indiana Jones, Superman films. He doubled Christopher Reeves. He doubled Harrison Ford. That guy's a legend. So there were a lot of people like that I was just in awe about. And Vic Armstrong, fair enough, when I was 22 or 23, I was umming and whether to try do the action actor route and try do stunts through acting, or become a stuntman, because you have to do certain professional qualifications. And Vic at the time was doing the Bond film. It was the one with Halle Berry. I can't remember what it was called, but it was the one with Halle Berry. And I emailed him out of the blue, just basically with my dilemma, then if I need to do this. And he invited me down to set. So, and this was the first time I'd been on a big movie set. I hadn't even done the Arkham Asylum games at this stage. So I went down to Pinewood Studios, first time down there. The only thing was, I was thinking about 2 days before I went down there, I tore all the ligaments to my ankle. So I went down hobbling, and everyone thought, I was like, what's this guy doing? What's he hobbling around? And that was a really good experience, because that definitely gave me an into whether I wanted to do this or not. The guys, a lot of them were hanging around, then there were rehearsals, it was, so it was from there really, I thought, yeah, I'm going to do stunts. This is what I think is right for me.
Wow, and what a great introduction to, Vic, as you say, is such a legend. So how was it then when you found yourself for the first time actually working on these big budget productions? That must have been a fantastic moment.
I actually should say I actually nearly quit. Because I got on the stunt register, and then the first big job I did, it felt more what it was just I was new in, so no one was going to trust me with anything big. They don't know who I am. But the first big job I did, it was I can't remember the film, but it was basically it was long hours. It was winter. Got there when it was dark. Leave when it was dark. It was sandy. It was like in a warehouse. There was sand everywhere. You were knocking your pipe out all day, and all I was doing was just fighting in the background. And I was like, literally, that first day, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I don't want to be an SA or an extra in the background. This is not what I signed up for. But then, straight after that, I went on to Sherlock Holmes, and that was it. That done it for me. That was it. It was like, yep, this is definitely for me. And Sherlock Holmes 2, obviously I had an acting part playing a character, but in Sherlock Holmes 1, there's a sewer scene where they're in a sewer trying to disarm a bomb, and some thugs come in, and I play one of them. And as I come in shooting, Jude Law shoots me, and I fall down on the ground. So that for me was like, yep, this is definitely what I want to do.
And more recently, obviously, not long since I had May the 4th, there was a fantastic picture of you with Chewbacca. As a fan, how was that to finally be on the Star Wars?
Yeah, I mean, same again. I had some time. Actually, I was nursing an injury. I had some time off, and I was asked to go in on it. And the thing is with Star Wars, though, you're not allowed any phones on set. And I didn't have my phone. So everyone's like, oh, you're not meant to have your phone. I didn't have my phone. Basically, I won't say who, but some of the costume basically have phones for continuity, don't they? So one of them had taken a picture, and Chewbacca was next to me, and I was like, he didn't get in the picture, but I just literally went, as he was walking by, I went, look, I've always wanted to hug a Wookiee. And he went, what? I went, I've always wanted to hug a Wookiee. I went, come here. And as I hugged him, I went, right. Pulled out, and they took the photo. He's like, oh, you can't do that with whatever. And then that basically, I didn't have, because obviously they wouldn't give you the photo. They're not allowed. And even afterwards, I don't think they're allowed. So that's why I'm a bit like, I don't know what the rules are. But when the May 4th came out, all these people would worked on the Star Wars were all posting Star Wars pics. I'm thinking, oh, it must be all right then. And then that costume person out of the blue went, oh, you might like this. And I'm like, so that's the first time I'd seen it. And I was like, oh my God, Chewie. Yes, it's the first time I'd seen it. Look, even my little pal got my little pal Chewie. So it's the first time I'd seen it. So I was like, oh yes. So and that was a good experience. I mean, because I hadn't done a Star Wars up to that point. Though for me though, even though the new Star Wars are cool and cool to work on, a privilege, the original three will always sort of stand different to. They don't have the same nostalgia for me. It's cool to be a part of, but you know, those original three, if you're a part of them, then you're a legend.
Yeah, working on those, they were breaking new ground, whereas as today, it's obviously an iconic film, but it's not exploring new techniques in the way that the first were, I suppose.
Yeah, no. And, you know, those first three, like many other people, I grew up with. The new ones I haven't grown up with, so they don't have the same hold for me. But, you know, so, like I said, I was still very happy to have done it, got the credit. You know, it's definitely ticking a box.
And just bringing it back to Doctor Who, because I'm aware that I'm running out of time. I said that, 4 generations of your family have been involved in the show.
Yeah.
Could you perhaps explain a little bit about what I'm talking about?
So my sister used to work on the show, and I think she used to work for art department. And there's a scene, you might know the episode, but it's the episode with the haunted house. And
so this would have been Hyde with Matt Smith and Jenna Coleman.
Yes, and the guy who's investigating has a wall with all these pictures on, all these like old photos. All those pictures are basically, it's my family album from my grandfather to my great grandfather, photo album basically. And what happened was they needed all these old photos, and my mum, she keeps all of that. She keeps all our family history and family tree. So my sister knew that she had access to it. She said, "Look, I'll get you, wherever you want. We've got photos almost as far as the Victorian times. So what do you want?" So she brought this photo album in, and then they put literally, and there are some close-up shots. You can see my mum as a baby, you can see my grandfather as a young boy, literally just plastered on this thing. And it was only after it aired, I'm like, that's like 4 generations of my family now that have done Doctor Who. Like, who else can say that? I mean, 3 generations of them just in one episode. So I was like, who can say that? There's got to be an award for it. There's got to be some Guinness World Record or something. Yeah, and also apparently in the Matt Smith era of seasons, there's somewhere in there there's a shop called Shakesheff. I've not seen it. I gotta be honest, I've not seen it. I don't know if they didn't shoot it or it's just, you know, glancing thing. There's some sort of shop, exterior location where there's a shop called Shakesheff, which I'm still hoping to find one day.
Well, that's something for viewers to go back and see if they can spot that. I can't say I've seen it, but I'll have a look.
Yeah, I mean, they might not have shot it. You don't know. But I know there was a shop, because when my sister worked in the department, I think it was my dad moaned that he'd never been on TV or something. So they said, oh, well, just put a shop called Shakesheff. And that's what they did. They had a sign with Shakesheff on it for some shop. So I've never seen it.
Well, one final question for me. Are you working on at the moment, or have you been working on before this happened? What can we look forward to?
Well, before this happened, I was doing Pennyworth. So Pennyworth is Batman's butler as a young man, and it's about his adventures. Season 1's already out, so we were doing season 2, and we were halfway through it, and then it all got shut down. So hopefully, I don't know when, but whenever things go back to normal, I'll be going straight back onto that to finish that up.
Hopefully, viewers will keep an eye out for that. And thank you very much for your time, Marcus. It's been absolutely fascinating.
No worries, not at all.
Cheers. So when talking to stuntmen, there are certain names that crop up time and time again and are seen as legends in the stunt world. And I think it's safe to say I'm talking to one of those now, none other than Rocky Taylor. Thank you for joining me.
That's very, very kind of you to make me a legend in my own lifetime. I'm still alive.
Very much so, and still busy working. I mean, you've not long released your book as well.
No, you're right. I've done a book called Jump, Rocky Jump, which is out. It's doing very well. Everybody that reads it says it's quite a good read, so I'm very happy with that. Yes, very proud of it as it happens. And I was very proud of it because my mother, who passed away in April, I wanted to get the book out before she passed away. And 2 weeks before she passed away, I got the book out and I took it up to her and she looked at it and she said, Jump, Rocky Jump, which is the name of the book. And that was one of my most proudest, happiest moments of my life, to see my mother know that I'd done a book about my life.
And what a fantastic read it is as well. If viewers haven't read it, go out and buy it. It's fantastic.
That's very kind of you. What's good about it is that, Alex, is that it's not a boring book. It's all antidotes, a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here. And, you know, you can pick it up whenever you want.
And one of those, I suppose, a footnote in your career is Doctor Who, which goes right back to the 60s.
Doctor Who is where I sort of started from. You're absolutely right. I did a couple of Doctor Who's, and Derek Ware was the stunt coordinator. And, you know, he was one of the founders of stunt work years and years ago. Good stunt coordinator, not so much a stunt man. I'm not bringing him down, but he got into stunt coordinating before he became a stunt man, really. He was one of those, very lucky man. But a very nice man. I did enjoy working for him. And
on Doctor Who, you also worked with David Anderson and
David Anderson, one of the greatest sword masters of all time. I think it was silver or gold or something he won in the Olympics. One of the great swordmen of our career. Very lovely man too.
And you also worked with Terry Walsh on the show.
Terry Walsh, yes, very sad. He left us. He'd been doing stunt work for a few years. And he was, you know, a very nice man, good stunt man. And he got an opportunity to double for Michael Caine. And I believe he was on a couple of pictures he did for Michael Caine. And then unfortunately he had a a stroke or a heart attack, I can't remember, and he passed away. It was just actually his peak of his career was just coming through.
I suppose if you're going to do Doctor Who, you want to work with the Daleks. Do you remember much about working with them?
Well, I'll be quite honest with you. Daleks weren't sort of in my vocabulary then. It's just what they were just machines going around making noises. I didn't realise until later on in my life that Daleks were going to be that wonderful and everybody was going to say Dalek, you know. So, you know, I understand now, you know, that they're a great machine and people love them, but it wasn't in my little bit.
At the time, this would just have been a couple of days' worth of work amongst many other television series.
Oh, yeah, I was very fortunate in my career. I went down on the Avengers playing a part as a thug, and Ray Austin, the stunt coordinator, asked me to do a jump over a balcony and land on a table and do a little fight scene. And I said, yeah, I can do that. And he went, great. And I did it. And he went, go and get changed. Went to the wardrobe, got suits, and I was now doubling for Steed on the Avengers for 5 or 6 years, which is quite incredible. And from that moment on, I was at Elstree Studios, and the Saint was there, Randall Locker, Department S, Champions. I mean, all those series. And I was fortunate enough that if I wasn't working on the Avengers, Les Crawford, who was the stunt coordinator on the other ones, and I used to go and do days here and that. It was like my apprentice of my stunt career was at Elstree Studios.
So was that the golden time for sort of action television then?
Of course it was, yes, of course it was. Absolutely right. The golden time, especially for me. You know, film work wasn't really my vocabulary then, though there were films happening. You know, I did a couple of days on the Bond many years ago and this and that, but I was also tied to the television, and television was the biggest part of my career. I'm very proud of it too. Doubling for Mike Pratt, Steed on the Avengers, Pat McNee. I did Danger Man. What's his name? The other one on the Department S. Anyway, you know what I mean? It was just a great time for me.
Professionals, champions.
The champions, yeah. Yeah, all those.
So how did you then make that move from television to film?
Well, what happened was I was working on the Avengers, as I said, and a guy called Joe Wadham, who used to own a company called 999 Cars, he got a film called Monte Carlo or Bust, and it meant taking out 10 or 12 stuntmen away for 6 months to Sweden, driving cars in snow and ice and all that. And he said, Rocky, you know, you're a good driver. Would you like to come away with me? And I said, yeah. He said, well, what we're going to do, we're going to send all the drivers down to Aldershot to learn how to drive on a skid pan. You know, so we went down there for 2 or 3 weeks, learning to drive the cars on skid pans, which is water, and you know, you'd learn how to skid and things, put the brakes on, put the handbrake on, because we were going to go to ice, and that's why we did it. And it was great. I really enjoyed it, and I had 6 months travelling around Europe on Monte Carlo Bust, and I was doubling for Peter Cook, driving the Dawlish car, and I crashed through an ice brick, and I'm now on a crest of run going down a mountain, 4 or 5 miles down the mountain on a crest of run. And Ken Anakin, the director, said it was the best part of the movie he'd ever shot. We had 5 cameras on the mountain, and 2 helicopters chasing me down. It was just a great sequence, and I was very proud of it.
And something like that, how long do you have to rehearse it and work out mechanics before?
Well, what happened? They showed me the mountain and said, we're going to put a crest of run there. And I looked at it and I said, well, we're going right the way around it? He went, yeah. And it worked out 4.5 miles or something it was. I said, well, great. So we practiced on a little bit of, we built a dummy bit at the bottom so I could practice just going up sideways to get the feel of the car. And, well, to be honest with you, you couldn't really practice coming down a mountain. So I just had to go and do it blind, and which I did. My only problem with me was it wasn't really me that I was worried about, because I was in a car. So I could hit the sides of the mountain and bounce backwards and forwards off. So we put three inches spikes in the tyres to keep a grip. But my big problem was the guys in front on a toboggan. Because what we did, we crashed through a wall, and there was supposed to be a toboggan in front of me. And we're chasing this toboggan down the mountain. And I was just worried, if one of them guys fell out, would I have time to brake? So it wasn't my fault, my bit, it was their bit that I was worried about. That kept me awake all night thinking about them. But Ken Anakin, the next day, when he saw the shot, came up to me and said, Rocky, it was the greatest shot he's seen. Go home and have a bottle of champagne with your lads and come back the next day. So that's what we did.
And would you often work with the same group of people? You know, would that be your sort of stunt unit?
Well, what happens in the film game, you get groups. You get a group of men there and a group of men here and a group of men there. You're either with that group or you're not with that group. And I was very fortunate because being a young, active type of man, I did judo when I was very young. I got black belt. I could learn how to fall properly and throw myself about. And all the other stuntmen were sort of older stuntmen that didn't do judo. All they could do was bits and pieces. Where I was fortunate enough, I could throw myself around. And that's where I got my name. That, you know, I'm very agile and I got a lot of work. That's how it worked for me. I was very fortunate. My father was a stuntman. So I sort of got my trade basically from him. But I learned it all through myself.
So with stunts being in the family, was it always a given that that's what you would do?
No. Because when I left school, I actually went into the technical side. I was on the camera side, you know, clapper, loader and all that, running around delivering stuff around the West End, letters and films. And it just happened that one day I was sitting in the office and the phone went and I answered the phone and it was Peter Diamond who wanted to speak to my father. He said, "Is that Rocky?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, Rocky." He said, "I want you to speak to you actually." I said, "Yeah." He said, "We're doing a film called The Young Ones down at Elstree and Cliff Richard needs to learn how to do judo. And I heard that you're a judo man." I said, "Yeah, well, I've got a black belt." He said, "Yeah. Would you like to come down to Elstree and teach Cliff Richard judo?" I went, "Well, I mean, don't forget, Cliff Richard was one of the biggest names in the, you know, he's like the Beatles, wasn't he, you know?" So I went, all right, I got my Lambretta, went down to Elstree, met Cliff, met the director. We spoke about the sequence and we got some mats in and I taught him how to do some judo throws. And then he said, "You're working so well with Cliff. Do you want to play the part as the thug that has the fight?" And I went, "Well, yeah, why not?" So I left the old technical side and became a stuntman. The rest is where I am now, history.
So there was never any ideas to go back
No,
to it then?
I didn't even know 4 or 5 years into my career as a stuntman, I didn't even know what the word stuntman was, to be honest. So it wasn't like that's what I wanted to do. All of a sudden, I was doing things. When I was doing things to Pat McNee on the Avengers, it's because he couldn't do it. That's all. I could do them, he could. And then I realised it became a stuntman. And that's how my industry and whatever I've become has happened.
And ambition of particularly television these days, things like Game of Thrones seems to be bigger, more visual. Have you found that the stunts that you're asked to do on television have been more demanding?
Your question is true, but what you've got to realise now, there's a lot of things called visual effects, special effects, and CGI. You know, where before, years ago, we were worried about wires breaking, ropes being seen when you're doing stuff. Now, you can have a rope as thick as your head, and they can take it out. So the industry become a lot safer. They actually want to see more stuff, more demanding stuff, but with what CGI can do now, you can create it. unfortunately, that's sort of gone beyond me a bit, you know, as my career is diminishing at 74, 75, you know, that bit's gone on a bit. It's gone on further, you know what I mean? It's, I've got to learn that now.
But yeah, and you also had a very long association with James Bond, which is famously a franchise that if you can do it, you physically do the stunt somehow. Has that changed as the films have progressed?
James Bond, I've done about 10 James Bonds, I think. I've doubled for Sean a couple of times and Pierce. Mainly Roger. I mean, but I didn't do a lot of doubling for them lads on them pictures. I was mainly a stuntman doing other stuff on them pictures, you know. I didn't actually double a lot for the main artist on them pictures. You know, like the big car turnover things and all that. That was done by Remy Julian and stuff like that years ago. Nowadays we can do it, but then days they were using special effect, very good drivers and stuff like that, you know. But I have done 10 Bonds.
And you doubled for two in one
I've
year.
doubled for two Bonds in 1 year.
Wow.
Sean Connery and Roger Moore. Never Say Never and Octopussy. So that's a bit of a feat, and I've got a Guinness record for it.
Wow, that is certainly a one-off. And who was more up for doing their own stunts?
I think if I was to answer your question truly, it would be Pierce Brosnan. You know, Sean didn't really want to do too much. Bit of sore fencing, throw a punch. Roger really only wanted to throw a punch, but Sean, Pierce Brosnan, you know, he wouldn't mind doing a bit more stuff. He was quite. I really like Pierce Brosnan out of them all.
And you said earlier you doubled for Patrick McNee, who was always seen as this perfect English gentleman. But when it came to it, was he quite good at working with you on stunts or smaller bits?
No, the answer to that question has always been asked, and I'm going to give it to you bluntly. He was great for me because he couldn't put one foot in front of another. He couldn't throw a left or a right punch, so I did it. He couldn't walk left or right, I did it. It was one of the greatest things because he couldn't do anything. He was absolutely useless, but a lovely man. So whenever there was any action, I was there, which gave me a lot of work, so I was very pleased.
Well, I mean, as we said, you're a world record-holding stuntman, and you know your career takes you straight back to the '60s. Is there any particular stunt or setup that you're most proud of?
Well, I mean, I had a very bad accident on Death Wish 3, which it's made me famous, if you like the word. I hate that word, famous. It's made people understand who I am, but it was, you know, a mistake that shouldn't have happened. It wasn't caused by my mistake, but the answer to the question, I suppose that one was very, you know, Death Wish 3 was a big thing in my life. Changed my whole life. You know, it made me what I am, who I am, and nearly killed me. So I presume Death Wish 3 was, if it sticks in my brain.
And also, you had a sort of martial arts background. Do you particularly have a specialism of what sort of stunts you'll do, or is it a case you do anything really?
No, martial arts. I really wasn't a martial arts artist. I became a black belt judo, which is a bit different from martial arts. Martial arts came at the end of my black belt days. I can do martial arts for films, i.e. I can still do karate and bits and pieces for film work, but I wouldn't say I'm a martial artist. But black belt judo, any chance you like, you can have me on the mat. Any randori, I'll have it.
And I don't want to take up too much of your time, so one final question, if I may. Am I right in thinking you were one of the original Honey Monsters?
Oh, you've hit me now, haven't you? Tell him about the honey, mummy. Yeah, I was very fortunate. A friend of mine called Kid Dabson was a golf pro, and his girlfriend worked for an agency who employed people to go around the country doing these funny things. And he was out of work. I was sort of out of work a bit. And she phoned him and said, "We've got this honey monster. to go round the country dressed as a honey monster, but we need 2 people. So he said, Rocky, do you want to come with me? So I said, yeah, all right. So we did it for a year. And everywhere we went was fantastic. Everywhere I went, I drove into a hotel, put the honey monster's head in the back seat, and we got the best hotel in the plane. We got first class travel in the restaurant. Everybody wanted my autograph as the honey monster. It was a great year.
Oh, fantastic. Well, on that fantastic note, I'd just like to say thank you very much, Rocky, for your time. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you about some of your work.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Our next live presentation will take place tomorrow and will follow the TV movie live tweet at 8:45 with interviews with actor Yi Ji So and writer Matthew Jacobs. And don't forget, new episodes of Unsung Heroes of Doctor Who goes live 6 p.m. each weeknight. Thank you for joining us once again, and we'll see you tomorrow at 8:45.